people in Louisiana and that it should not be because everyone has a right to be homosexual people they are sexually homosexual. They're first, they kill someone, and they have to be in a place in that they are with patients. This is a really good topic for girls. Yeah, girls tend to accept homosexuality more than
yeah, some cultures, some aspects, it could be. I actually didn't pick the topic because of the substantive issue there, so we won't be talking much about the homosexuality part. So, what is interesting about the text in this class, for the purposes of today's discussion, is that the text kind of unproblematically supposes that it's totally normal that we have a certain moral agenda, that we accept certain things but not others, or that we accept that certain things should not be criminalized at least. And we apply these standards wherever they become relevant. We apply these standards to the we are talking about Uganda, we apply them to the US, to Kenya, France, pick your choice. So the interesting assumption here seems to be that human rights apply totally globally, universally, without regard to any cultural differences. At least that seems to be the underlying assumption that makes the text work. Right? In other words, but this is actually something that is not obvious. So it's not something that we need to argue for. Even in everyday politics, you often hear such things that human rights are Western thing, or human rights are Brussels agenda or US agenda, or something like that. And I think that it's interesting to take these issues seriously and check whether that's really the case or how far we can have good arguments for applying human
So, for
rights.
example, according to this cultural relativism, would that be, so according to that, we could actually not judge Uganda for passing this law?
You've also read about cultural relativism, so please once.
Yes,
But why?
for instance, every single person has like different, not persons, but different norms. So we should treat them with respect. And we kind of should accept what cultural systems that we have to set norms. And they are with cultural differences and because of all these systems, because that's why they look like this. And we cannot really change something with certain rules.
Do we say that we cannot change these things?
Well, we can really change the culture itself. It will kind of like we cannot concentrate on changing the culture. We have, I think in my opinion, we should change the perspective of people, and then the culture will change.
I'm not sure whether there's any difference between these two, changing the culture and changing the way people see things. That's certainly what makes culture part of it.
There's a difference. So, but yeah, there is a difference. So if you want to change the culture itself, you might just kind of state that from now on the culture will be like this. But if you change the perspective of the people, then they will not feel forced into this new kind of culture. So they can change themselves.
Yeah, I think that so the distinction that you draw is an important one. It's between something like forcefully changing people's ways, like by military intervention or something like that, or reforming cultures by education and so on. I think, in a sense, so the distinction is relevant practically, of course. It's hugely important, but it's not necessarily important to the gist of cultural relativism, which would simply be that we should not change other cultures on moral basis, whether forcefully or nicely and slowly by education. So I think the cultural relativists would be happier if we sent human rights educators to armies that liberate people or something like that. Let's get back to basics a little bit. So what is cultural relativism? How would you summarize the position?
Maybe the way that every little society or every piece of every group has a rules and a moral, and we should accept it. So yes, maybe the Eskimos, they live in very
Extreme.
Extreme circumstances, and they have very extreme rules that way they kill their children, that affect the girls to keep up the population. And in Uganda, I think it's some kind of so it's to keep up the population. It's some maybe some religious influence because I've seen in Sweden the influence of religion is very huge. And maybe I don't know if I'm Christian or not, but I think yes.
At least there is a power associated with those who are Christians. So whether they are majority or minority in numerical terms, less important. But yeah.
So maybe if the Christian church would change to side, there might be a difference in humanity.
Yes, but
like cultural business. Yes, it was what I said. And so every little society.
And also, there's no universal right or wrong. There's no universal truth or standard by which we could state if a custom is wrong or not right.
Yeah, okay. So there are lots of different statements here, and I think it's good to keep some of them separate. So you said, for example, something like yeah, sure. Essentially, you will really hear us, right? So,
Sorry?
You will actually hear us from there. Which is no reason to stay out of it. Okay, so there was a first claim that you made that, well, something like every culture has its own distinct moral codes, or something of that sort, right? Then there's a second claim, something like we should accept every culture's moral code. There's a third claim, which is something like there's no universally valid moral code. Still more or less legible, rather less than more, right? So it's quite important that this is not a necessary part of the relativist thesis. So this is more like a sociological observation here, right? The first one that's just, you know, looking around in the world and seeing that people think differently about morality. So that's not something about what we should do or shouldn't do. That's just something about what we actually do. And the second two are different. So they are things about what we should do or shouldn't do. So that is moral code, as opposed to just a moral code. It's something that really tells us what we should or shouldn't do. So this means that these are actually closer to the core of cultural relativism, which is about what norms we should follow. And
I'm sorry, in case you were wondering.
So I'm not even sure actually that blame number 3 forms a crucial part of cultural relativism. Because cultural relativism doesn't necessarily have to commit to the claim that cultures actually have different moral codes. It just commits to the claim that whatever moral code the culture has, that's right. So if every culture has the same moral code, because of globalization or whatever, we happen to have the same moral code, that's fine. So then we do have moral universal moral truths. It's just that according to cultural relativism, that's because it's basically a culture that really dictates or gives validity to the moral norms that we have. So although it's normally illustrated by the diversity of cultures and moral codes, that's actually not crucial to cultural relativism.
Okay, so this is not directly related to this topic, but what do you think will happen in the future after globalization to the politics of the world? Like, and the culture and these worlds? Like, will they merge into one big global system, or?
I have no idea. I don't know. I guess it's a really complex sociological question. So most probably there's something like a universalization to some extent. The people tend to accept more and more westernized norms in
I mean, religion goes there, which is.
Yeah, but it's also true that there is variety added to those norms. So I'm not sure whether I could point out any interesting relations there. No, the important thing to know is that that is a sociological question. So that's not something that belongs to political theory in this strict sense, because it's a question about what will people think or believe or value or something like that. So the core of cultural relativism actually seems to be something like this. And there's a funny problem with this statement. What could that problem be? So if you say, well, that's cultural relativism, that's just the view that we should accept every culture's moral.
Well, we also have moral norms. Like, we also have our norms coming from our culture. So we will always have like an opinion or like a judgment of these other cultures' norms.
Well, yes. although they shouldn't apply to those other cultures, since there's actually a logical point about formulating cultural relativism this way. The problem seems to be that this is a very general statement. So this is also a statement about, well, we should or shouldn't do in moral terms. And a cultural relativist must also think that this is also something that depends on our culture. So the truth of cultural relativism must be universal. Otherwise, it's not an interesting thesis, right? So we don't really want to say we are cultural relativists, that according to us Westerners, we shouldn't be judging other cultures. We want to say, no one really should judge other cultures. But then, someone say from the Arabic word could say, well, we don't have a farm like that. And you have just said that it is okay to respect each other's culture. That we should respect each other's culture. Well, it seems self-undermining, right? So, if that is also relativistic, the main claim, then it's completely fine that there are cultures that judge everyone else. There are cultures that do not. That's funny, right? Yeah, that's a technical point in a sense, but that's funny. So if you want to have a credible cultural relativism, you actually have to follow it. Because this way it just collapses into itself. Okay. Let's see some of the arguments that we discussed in the chapter in favor of cultural relativism. We had something that was called as far as the cultural difference. Is that right?
Yeah.
What is that?
So basically stating that different cultures have different moral codes, which we already on board. And there is no objective truth in morality.
Yes.
And right and wrong are matters of opinion that can be different according to the cultures.
So, what is the structure of the argument? What are the premises? What is the conclusion? Let's try to put some order in here.
The premise is that every culture has a different moral code.
Yes.
And the second one, that there's no universal truth or right or wrong. It's supposed to be the logical the conclusion.
Yeah. So that seems to be the conclusion. That's the argument word or it doesn't. Sorry? Yes, sure.
We should bring a can of water.
So,
It's not
and why not?
because it really doesn't logically follow from the premise.
Right. Is the premise true or false?
That's true.
Yeah. How do we do arguments that use true premises, but they are using bad logic?
Like that. Inverse.
Yes.
Not valid, invalid, no.
Yes, that's it, exactly. So this is an invalid argument. So what does that mean? Is the conclusion false?
Yeah, it means that it's not concerned with difference.
Yes. That's crucial to producers. Very good. We have no idea about the conclusion on the basis of the premise. That's all we know so far when we say that the argument is actually valid. Okay, so far so good. At least this is at least important that we know that if we want to argue for this one, we have to show something more than that. Good. What other things does the book mention that counts either in favor of this or against it?
Against the.
Against it, yes. So this is basically cultural relativism, right? So that's what we are against. For
or against it.
Against cultural relativism, we see in the box on the board. Any arguments for against it? At least, yes.
Yeah, I think so.
What would that be?
Definition of objective truth.
That.
The definition of objective truth, so we should define some path, what means objective truth. Because to say objective truth is also evidence and the contrary. There, I think, in a way that will never end. So, instead of saying it really is maybe true, but anyway, we never do it. Yes, we've always been expressing differences.
And what would be the basis for thinking that? For thinking that there is no objective truth.
And we can say that there's not there's one objective truth, but it will never be. My opinion.
Well, let's compare the cases. This is something that Rachel also does. Let's compare the case of political morality to, say, scientific disagreement. So you say 2 + 2 are 4, and I say 2 + 2 are 5. And I also add that, yes, we believe in different things, and that's fine because I tolerate what you do.
Well, actually, in philosophy, they say that max is logical, so sometimes it's false, sometimes it's wrong, sometimes.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the.
Yeah. Let's take another example. So you say that the water in that glass contains hydrogen and oxygen. And I say, well, no, it's actually chlorine and helium. But I also respect your view. What would we react to this sort of disagreement? This is very similar to things like, it is morally acceptable to be gay, it's morally not acceptable to be gay. Let's say you are the ones to judge what to do with this situation. So there's one chemical analysis on that side, and there's one chemical analysis on this side. And we want to know whether there's any objective truth about the matter.
Whether it's scientifically proven universal. So I know what you mean, I think. So The fact that, I mean, the statement, there is no objective truth, for example, in this chapter, it's, I think, a geographical example. For example, the people used to believe that the earth was flat, and according to this, according to cultural relativism, they're supposed to accept that and say that yes, that can be right, it is right because it's a cultural code. But and of course, some people say that the earth is round or whatever. And
spherical, actually.
yes, right, that's right, yeah. And that is actually the truth. Like it's a fact. So
But there was a proven point. That's why I think it was
yeah.
So until we know like that being homosexual is scientifically right or wrong, we can go really
Okay, so there's a lot of interesting stuff here. One is that you say it became a fact that the Earth is spherical only when it was scientifically proven. Now, that seems to be wrong. So, the science is normally taken as discovering facts, not as making up facts. So that's more like storytelling or fiction, where science prides itself in finding out what really the objective truth is, what we didn't know before, what we disagreed with before. But now we have a way to find it out. So Rachel's point in the analogy is that just because we disagree about something, that's no proof at all that there is no objective truth about a certain matter. There can be facts out there about this or that question. It's just that we may not know about that. But it doesn't mean that there is one or the other party to a debate who is more right than the other about that fact. So even in the Middle Ages, let's assume that some people thought that the Earth is flat, whereas others thought that the Earth is straight. But it's not true that they were equally right about that. Some people were right and others happen to be wrong. That's it.
So this stands, right? I mean, there is no objective truth.
Well, in some things. So I think the interesting point of Rachel's is that he says, show me why the saying doesn't hold for morality. Show me why it isn't the case. So we just disagree about moral truths, but it's actually true that some of us are right, whereas others are wrong. Because that seems to be the case in lots of disagreements that we have. That's not a conclusive argument in favor or against relativism, but it's an important challenge that relativism has to answer. You seem to have a question.
Oh no, I'm good.
I'm
just so there are proven facts, and there are moral questions, and this argument, for example, fails when it comes to facts that can be proven scientifically or whatever, but it's still debatable when it comes to moral questions.
So the idea is that the first really important thing to keep clearly this thing is sort of, well, claims about the world and claims about you. So facts are claims about the world. And we either have facts about certain things or we don't. So, when I ask, is there, I don't know, chair somewhere in Beijing, in a specific spot on Earth that I give the coordinates for, there is an answer to that, right? It's just that I don't know the answer to it. But there is a fact out there in the world which settles my question. But there's a totally different thing whether I can prove if there's a fact, whether I know that there's a fact about this or that. These are all about my relation to the world. It's about what I can know or what I have access to. So the interesting thing is that cultural relativism is a thesis not about what you think about morality. Because as such, that would be an uninteresting thesis. That would be just a sociological claim that every people think or every culture thinks something different about us. Well, yeah, okay. We knew that much so far. But it says something else. It says, no, there is in the world no objective moral truth beyond whatever these cultures think. So, cultural relativism is a thesis about the moral world, if you like, and not about your relation to morality. And as such, it is a very strong claim that objective truth doesn't exist about at least certain kind of things. So,
Sorry,
no, that should be fine.
Okay. So according to cultural relativism, the claim that the earth is flat could not be called right or wrong.
That's great. That's exactly where I'm going. So you can have relativism about different things in the world. So cultural relativism is a relativistic theory about morals.
Okay.
So you could have a culture, you could have scientific cultural relativism too. So you could say that, well, my theory is that actually, no, it's just that, in Western science, as we see the world, actually the Earth seems spherical, other cultures also have a system of thinking about the Earth, and their culture is flat, and so that would be possible. Normally, cultural relativists not making that claim. But this is an interesting way of proceeding to ask, okay, so why don't you make that claim? What is the difference between scientific facts and moral facts? Mm-hmm. Why do you think that there is objective truth about one, but not about the other one? First question so far? Is that followable or? Do you know if I have a clue?
I don't have a question though. No.
Yes, but I would actually go down. So, I think we've actually successfully skipped some. Okay, so question 5 will be important to discuss. Rachel's actually discusses 3 consequences of cultural relativism that we might not really like. So, before getting into that, just so as to see where we are at our we still have an argument for there's a cultural difference in argument for relativism that didn't seem to work. And then we still have an argument against relativism, which doesn't really refute relativism. It just says wait, you have a question to answer here. So, relativism makes sense about morals, why doesn't it make sense about science? Do you ever work that out first before you really insist on moral relativism? So, now we want to see some things that Rachel finds really bad about cultural relativism. What are these?
Should I just read out all the things?
Well, just summarize in your words.
So,
What is the first one?
the first one is that we can no longer say that the customs of other societies are morally inferior to our own, which basically means that we cannot decide if other societies are better or more right than ours. And, yeah. That's it.
Does it hold about only about other cultures? So can we criticize our own culture according to cultural relativism?
Our own culture.
Ignore
No. I we accept our cultures, but can we present them according to cultural purposes? So can we say anything against other cultures? And when we accept it.
What do you think?
No. If there's no right or wrong, we cannot say that there's something wrong about it because there's no standard that we can compare to. So, yeah.
When the answer for stages to right or wrong,
Okay, that's interesting. So I think that's a good point, but it follows from a somewhat mistaken characterization of the position. So the position is not really that there's no right or wrong whatsoever. The position is just that it depends on the knowledge of what is right or what is wrong. So there are standards.
that can cause
Well, according to so ours according to others.
Yeah.
Yeah, and others, we can criticize other cultures, but according to their norms.
It's social that this criticism of our
Yes, that's right. So it's not total skepticism about moral critiques. It's just everyone in their own ways, their own standards. It's, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. That's the spirit of the position. So you can say something like, well, for example, in Uganda, there's a culture that's deeply anti-gay, so the political institutions can be criticized in the sense that they are still not thoroughgoingly anti-gay. There should be more to be done against gay people, or something like that.
That's what that society would say. I mean,
That's what cultural relativists could say
Okay.
when they are asked, so how would you criticize Uganda? And they say, oh, I think there's a little bit of room for healing and there's a little bit of room for over there. You are not making good use of it, although that's your moral norm. So it's sort of instrumental. It just takes the fundamentalist moral assumptions from the culture as given, and then applies them.
Another question. So these societies, we always talk about countries. So society is equal to a country. But actually, what if you what if you don't belong to that?
Yes.
What if you have different beliefs? And like, what do you belong to then? Or what do you do then?
Great question. Yes, indeed. So one of the crucial problems with cultural relativism is, of course, a minor problem that in order to know what the norms are, we would somehow have to know where cultures start and where they end. So,
And also, if you, just to follow up on the question, so if you live in Ghana, for example, you have the right to criticize that society according to different moral codes, or no, you have right to criticize according to their moral. Do you know what I'm getting at? I'm not really sure how to form. I mean,
well, so there are different things here, I think. One is whether your right to criticism depends on your place of residence or something like that. I think that the answer to that is clearly no. So as long as you are applying the right norms to the right culture, which means their own norms, you can criticize from anywhere, whether Bangladesh or New York or Timbuktu, doesn't matter. But I think that there is a related problem which you also hinted at earlier. So it seemed that if cultures were sort of just neatly separated, then this is good because we can apply the moral code of the Greens to the Green culture, and we can apply the moral norms of the Reds to the Red culture. But unfortunately, the world doesn't seem to be such a neat place, nor has it ever been. So it seems that there are some people who live here too. They form a minority, for example. Not even sure where culture starts. Like, sure.
or if you believe in certain things from that culture, but you also agree with some things from the other.
Right. Good. So it's really questionable that. So this looks nice when we apply these two institutions, because then it's a little bit less problematic. Institutions belong to groups rather than individuals. So we think that this can easily be done. We just pick out what the culture of the institution is, and then apply norms that they have. But it's not the case. I mean, normally institutions, especially political institutions, they are institutions of very different people. I mean, what does it mean, for example, that the Hungarian state is an institution that what's Hungarian culture? What is that? What are Hungarian morals? Some people in Hungary live this way, some others that way. So it seems very, very difficult actually to apply the cultural relativism, because we have no idea where the culture starts, where it ends, and which institutions belong to which culture. Let alone when you start judging individuals' moral behaviors. It's like, to know, do you, for example, or share some culture in milestone? I think in a sense, yes, but this doesn't mean that you have your own moral codes and only that can apply, or maybe Hungarian moral codes can also apply. Who knows?
Actually, I would say that each individual has their own moral code.
Well,
that would mean no one actually has the right to criticize him.
Yes, that would be a very strong position for ethical individualism or something. Yeah, ethical individualism. I don't think actually that makes much sense. That's because the whole point of having a moral code is usually to regulate social behavior. So if you end up saying, well, everyone can behave as they wish or think is right or whatever, then that won't do any. That will just preempt the function of morality. There won't be any coordination of cooperation that it makes easy. We will just have people who follow their own rules, and that's what we have without our do. So, what I wanted to drive at with this is that I think at least it's important to realize how difficult a position cultural relativism is. So there's a lot of talk about cultural relativism these days. It's very widely accepted in the academia in many disciplines. And I think it's important to realize how many challenges it actually needs to face, and finds it's really difficult to face. Because knowing about these arguments entitled us to use a little bit more objectivist language and to go on and make interesting moral arguments and judge institutions elsewhere doing the work. Which is part of what political theory does. So this is actually a methodologically important bit to continue doing political theory. So if you want to say that there's something wrong about, like, you know, illegal institutions which try to kill homosexuals in Uganda, or if you want to say that there's something wrong about female excision, or forcefully subjecting young girls to that, then we have to be able to make these, to fight cultural relativism in an argument.
So I have another question.
Yeah.
I'm trying to organize my thoughts because I'm not really clear on this. I mean, I am, but for example, if say I live in or I live by the moral codes of that society in Uganda, which believes that you know, which is anti-gay, and so I completely live by those moral codes, and I get. But okay, so if I do, so if I belong to that society in that sense, if I belong to that moral code, do I have the right to say, well, still, I don't think it should be that harsh. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, do I have the right then to criticize my own? Or does that already mean that I fail at following those moral codes, so I'm basically out of the group? You know what I mean?
Good question. I think I guess it more or less has to mean that you're already out of the group.
Like, no longer follow those.
Yeah, right. I mean,
But maybe they're following these moral, like, I mean, this moral code, but then you have other beliefs that you're following. So maybe then you belong to the society, but still you have other beliefs, which you do not, like, do not present to anyone, but they're your beliefs, but you still decide to join the society.
So do I have the right then to criticize that moral code, which is supposed to be my own, but it's not because I don't. Or so if I don't believe in it, I'm no longer a part of that society.
well, I think that's a good point. So your debate actually points out the problem that people usually don't even, well, that's kind of the same problem that we just discussed. People don't really belong to one culture or another, but they kind of take on some norms of one culture and some norms of another, or they just take on norms of one culture but only partially. Other norms of theirs are maybe not cultural because they're not shared with others. No. So I guess part of the problem here is that cultural relativism, in order to make sense, has to take cultures really rigidly.
Yeah.
So, which is very realistic. So that's not how people actually are. Well, I'm not sure whether probably it's an ideal in there. But the point is that in order to make good use of the theory, by good use I mean in protecting these criticized practices, usually you have to insist that these people form very rigid, conform community with almost fully shared norms. Well, that doesn't seem to be very true in most cases. This is a sociological question. So it has to be seen case by case.
So considering everything we just said, wouldn't it be a true claim that actually, so really nobody has the right to criticize anyone?
Well, it could be the case.
Because there's no completely similar.
Yeah, there's no complete overlap.
So in that sense, you don't want to criticize anyone.
So you can criticize the beliefs of other people which you share.
Yes, but we always have some beliefs that we share with others. So then that would. So I think this is a good place to end on. And there seems to be a dilemma. You either take cultures very tightly, in which case the position just collapses into something like individualism. We just don't have shared norms. So what's the point of talking about morality at all? On the other side, well, we do share some norms with everyone. So why not everyone can criticize everyone? But then what's the point of being relativistic anymore? That's just, that's just a universalist position. That's it. So this is a good dilemma I think to land with. It's yet another challenge that cultural relativist has to reflect on and has to somehow defend herself against. All right, so that's actually what I planned for today about cultural relativism. I hope we're not disappointed that we didn't talk much about gay and anti-gay stuff. I hope this was interesting too. And,
I have a question.
yes.
Can I sit into the Wednesday class? Just because I'm interested in the opinions and the debates which you guys have.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Super. So this was the intro part of the course, and you're very welcome to join the non-intro part of the course too. So if you are, which I hope, then we are meeting next week too.
So
Okay.
this time or next week?
I think we will be next week this time, yes.
Okay, but I don't want to be too good or you don't know yet?
Yes, that's a good question actually. I've got to ask Rita about that. Yes.
Okay, because this time would be perfect for me.
Okay. I'm gonna ask Rita to make sure that there really is two groups, as I presume. Okay.
De én igazából nem a háromadások ugyanaz hogy mindenki ugyanaz volt, hogy szó sem van a szép és nem a beszélő, vagy nem a igen, nem a dolog, hogy ilyen
nem járt.
Nem, még kint van a Ruzsik, meg az a értem, hogy megfülye, mert igazából én nagyon járok. Hát mondjuk nem olvastam, de lehet érdekes. Tehát én elvileg ezt járok, de hogy most nem tudok, hogy megszálláltam.
Igen. Hát szinte többet már sem vagy látva, csak azért őben legalább akkor is akkor
Megmondod.
Lehet.
Azt megőrök. Nem jutott eszembe, és most jut eszembe, amikor elkerülünk róla, hogy lejárt a csomó mindenit.
Még kevesebb a majom.
De nem, most jönnek ketten.
Oké. Hát viszont a lehelyet, milyen elég? Ja, persze. Szuper, köszönöm. Na?
Hát elment a hajnyiszolni.
Azt láttam, hogy elment, csak azt nem látom, hogy visszajött.
Mert azt mondta, hogy elmegy szólni, mert te tudja, hol az mert valahol máshol szerint valahol. Igen, nem lehet eltölteni.
Most nem most fogunk menni. Úgyhogy kicsit. De elég sokáig fél évig mindig, aztán leszedeltem, mert a súlyolnak a kút, és itt és annyira gyenge volt alapján, hogy már nincs szívemre megerősödött újra. Jobban nagyon sok, nekem azért van az előttem, mert hogy irányulunk, és annak a közben annak egy nincsen ellenvetése. Nekem keresztényen akartam, hogy valami kérdést, és én voltam a tanácsban, tehát a vizsgálat, és támasztottam. Szeretek közönteni. Sőt, azt húzom határozottan. Nem az, hogy nem tudsz szabadni. Ez megerősít. Igen, ezt csupán megerősít. A dolgokban így van, vagy csak elváltam egy ablakot.
Én segítek, jó, mert most megölj? Jó.
Vagy nem.
Nem biztos, mert most csak minden majd nyitva. Ez a kisebb probléma.
A videó sem rakott ki.
Értem, csak most nem tudom, hogy nyitottam meg az írát, de...
Hát elméletileg abba kellene, hogy legyen.
Értem, de hogy még folyik egyáltalán? Tessék?
Világítok, nem tudom még lesz.
Milyen igaz? Hát...
Nem csukoltunk le mindent, ment csak az asztalra.
De, csak azt nem fogjuk, hogy...
Nem?
Nem. Ez a milestone calendar.
Elméletileg ennek teljesen külön ablaknak kell lennie.
Tényleg.
Aha.
De...
Hát így, ilyet se láttam még nagyon, hogy így csinálta volna. Ez csodálatos. Ja, hát nem tudom, elméletileg nem rajzira elhízó. Nazrinak még nem
Most na mindegy, most újra hozzáadom, most itt vagyunk.
Jó.
Hát,
Nézzük, ha becsatlakozom. Van egyébként már, amely feltétlenül már
Hát azt hiszem, hogy így van, hát azt hiszem, hogy így van,
a táblára csak vagyunk, mert szerintem nem tudom látszani. Ja, na és hol vannak a kedves classmate-ek?
De egész dobott el.
And some are joining. Well, I hope some are joining. Not yet. Okay. So far,
Mallory hasn't got
still. Okay, I'm gonna tell it to Rita and I'll be back next.
Nem kaptak előállás időt, és már elküldték másodszorra is, és nem tudom csak.
Well, Sam on his case one. Kétszer közük kell most, úgyhogy ebben meg kell érkezni. Ja, itt be fog, nem, valószínűleg itt be fog jönni. Okay, so good. We'll come back. But we are gonna start. No more waiting. That's it. So far we've discussed two major schools of international relations, and the third one, which was sort of criticism of the second one of these. And today we are going to discuss basically the third most important school in international relations thinking, which is called constructivism in international relations. So, By the way, I just sent this around. So, if you had to summarize in one sentence on the basis of the readings, what is constructivism? What is special about constructivist thinking?
They work with social beliefs and other social things, and with constructivism based on the social affairs and other things.
Okay, as opposed to?
As opposed to other beliefs like normative thinking.
Well, yeah, is constructivism against normative thinking?
Naturalism. No.
What is it against?
So, the development and so on is concentrates on the effects of the material vaccine,
Such as?
such as the physical trade on the bombs and so on. And the constructivism is more human, so it's but between for the human and the historical aspects of the action.
Okay, so at least there seems to be a focus in constructivism on social relations or the way we perceive certain things in the world. And in other schools, there seems to be an emphasis on objective or material things like how many weapons does this country have? Does the country have nuclear weapons or not? So, like very matter of fact things. Constructivism is more like, how do these people see this? Why do they consider this?
No, sorry, I'm just looking for the question because now.
Okay. Okay. So this is useful just to have like a very intuitive idea about what constructivism is and how it sees international relations. Let's get onto the details a little bit. Let's have a look at the questions. Do you all have that in front of you? Internet access, yes. Okay, so let's have a look at the first question. Anyone?
Who has the concept of sovereignty changed over time? And wrote since 1945 in case of human rights violation, international intervention is acceptable and necessary. So there is no more sovereign state if there is this kind of violation.
Right. Girls, do pay attention. So, yeah, that's right. So it seems that states were sovereign in a different way before 1945 than after it. Okay, so why is that interesting, according to the constructivist?
Because it is again not material thing, but it's a part of the humans, but that's something for people know why they do it, so it's kind of a connection.
Yeah, something like that. So this is one example that the constructivist is interested in. So it seems that there's a concept that some people in international relations just take as obvious. States are sovereign, end of story. And then the constructivist says,
Well, look, what does that mean? Do you think that's just an objective concept? No, it is not. It's something that people actually share in different things, maybe even in different cultures, certainly in different times. Okay, so that's maybe something that we need to take into consideration when we are making up explanatory theories or predictions about how states will behave in their international relations and so on.
Excuse me, whether we ask whether we can recall the lesson because she wants to listen to
Sure.
Maybe we can recall with a mobile phone. If it's
Well, I don't think that would be a good sample. Would you mind, Anna, would you mind asking Rita to come in and restart?
Yes. What can I answer for the tree number 24?
Yeah.
Let me
Well, why
why
not now? Yeah. And
This is what makes radicalism because it's not crazy. I think because they don't really care about it, don't take the science and the people who think the people in account why the construction does. So they think the society is really important and it can affect everything around life and this cannot take nothing.
Good. Okay. Perfect. So, okay. So as far as I remember, there's a really good example in the book chapter about the threat of North Korea versus Great Britain. I'm not sure whether that's immediately the next question, but I think that fits here quite well. So, well, what is that example? What is it? What is there to be explained in that example?
I'm going to stop the broadcast and start the one.